If we were to continue delving into different passages of Scripture, all of a sudden you arrive at this understanding that healing and the healing move of God in the human realm it's a very complex, dynamic thing. The last thing you want to do is to get too rigid about prescribing, God will only work in this circumstance or in that style or through that person or via that particular prayer or through this particular spiritual principle. I mean, Scripture is full of almost seemingly contradictory. They're not contradictory, of course.
It's definitely paradoxical.
Ways, that show that really we need the attitude of a child, an attitude of expectancy, an attitude of not being surprised by anything, not putting too many prerequisites or expectations. I think that's the dramatic nature of Naaman's, that leper that you were talking about. I mean, he had this idea that God could only work through a particular river, through a particular kind of prophet. Talk
about a guy that really didn't want to do it. He was angry.
Exactly. So this guy was like, the perfect candidate for a rejection, and for a totally unproductive encounter with the gift of healing. And yet, God was there, and He had a plan. So, I think it's just important to come with that childlike faith, not looking at my own flaws, how I feel in the moment, the vessel that God is going to use, the particular prayer and how dramatic or non-dramatic is going to be, or how long or short is going to be. It really is God. And it's just that desire and that expectation to want to see God do something. And that leads me, Sonia, because you're here we have, we're not talking now about Naaman or some biblical character. We're talking about a human being that we know. And by the way, full disclosure, Sonia happens to be my sister-in-law as well, and she is, as we have said, Pastor Stephen Johnson's wife, and also involved in her own ministry, and also studied at Gordon Conwell, and still in the process of finishing her master's at Gordon Conwell. But you yourself have had your own personal journey that has brought you to really a frontal encounter with God's healing power. Tell us a little bit about that and how you, actually, the two of you intersect, John Machado's healing ministry and your own need, and how the Lord brought that about. But at the same time, I'll let you two actually work this out, because I know that Stephen has, you had a part to play in that the whole encounter, and how you two came in touch, and then how the Lord worked. So take it from there.
Well, I will start by saying that I always, even as a child, I always had the belief that God healed people. And I never...
And you came from a Catholic background. That's an important
but I never questioned it. For me, it was a given. For what little I had read of the Bible at that point, I just saw it happening. So for me, it was very logical that if He had done it then, why not? God doesn't change, so He would still be doing it now. So that has never been a hang-up of mine. But what I did see is that I wasn't seeing it. And that had become a big issue for me, because I kept wondering, okay, if God says that He's going to do this, and it's all over the Scriptures, and He does it over and over, and seems to be one of the main ministries of the Lord, then why is it that we're not seeing it?
Was this before you started your own theological study journey? And
through the years, even when I wasn't a committed believer. And that's how I saw it. And actually that intensified as I went into seminary and started doing ministries. I saw transformation of people's hearts, and I saw growth in people, and I did see miracles, but in the Scriptures you see an explosion of the goodness of the Lord in all these ways, and I wasn't seeing that. So I always wondered, okay, so Lord, if this is so, then why are we not seeing this in our days, in our churches? And to segue into how we came to connect with John, you want to?
Well, tell him a little bit about what you had started to struggle with.
Sure, okay.
And then we'll talk about that.
Okay, so I had been sick for a few years at that point, and it had become worse and worse last year, to the point that I had this quiet desperation in my heart. That's how I would say it. I was very, very worried. I was in a lot of pain, physical pain, and of course, that affects you emotionally as well.
Was this a pain in the joints, pain in your whole body? Was it a systemic kind of thing? How would you describe it?
I
Just for the sake
had
of
a lot of pain in my
clarity.
joints, so my knees, my wrists, my arms, my hands in general, and I had chronic fatigue.
This is always, whether you moved or not?
Constantly there.
Pain in your skin.
Oh yeah, one of the nasty things I had developed was that my skin was hurting. So even clothes on me would hurt. And it was not just a nuisance at that point. It was beginning to affect how I functioned. And
you have three daughters,
and I have three little
small
ones
daughters,
that
and
demand
they
a
keep you
lot
very
of
busy.
energy and attention. And that was one of my main concerns. How am I going to be able to be a mom to them, and to be an active mom, and to do what I believe the Lord has called me to do? And the Lord has said so many things in my heart.
Did that affect the way you saw your ministry as well? And
definitely.
Did you see that as a contradiction, the fact that here you are?
Definitely.
Talking about a
exactly.
good God,
so it
powerful
had
God,
become in that I've begun to question God. It's like, well, if you say that I'm going to do this, that, and the other, and actually one of the things that I've been told many times is that I will be involved in a healing ministry. So if this is so,
Definitely.
how is it that I'm in this state? And what are you going to do to help me out? I just don't see it. And I had many moments. We have 3 levels in our home, and I often had to go from the first level to the second level during the day, and I dreaded it because it hurt and because I was so fatigued that even thinking of going up the stairs was a big deal. And oftentimes, like halfway through the stairs, I would stop and pray, and kind of like it was more like an angry prayer. Lord, why are you not doing something?
It's very understandable. Yeah.
So in the midst of this, we're going about our business at the church, and one of the older ladies comes and tells me, Pastor, I was at a conference this weekend, and my ears were healed. I've had a hearing aid for years, and now I don't have them anymore, and my back pain that I've had for years is totally gone. Mm-hmm. And of course, my initial thought to respond was, just to kind of, play a little joke with her. She's a willing, joking partner. So, but she said, no, I really, my ears are healed. And she's telling me the story, and it turns out her daughter is a part of John's ministry and has gone to the trainings, and so she went to one of these things. And then another woman comes and says, Pastor, I've had depression for years and I've been healed. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? All these people in my church, 2 people in my church are getting healed.
They didn't ask my permission to get healed.
Right.
Or
Nobody submitted a request. So I said, well, what's going on? I said, well, this man, he has this ministry, and we went out, and he's down on the Cape. Like, at the Cape, who's down on the Cape?
Cold up there.
Right. So I naturally think, well, we need to go see who this guy is and see what's going on, and with no predetermined conclusions about what we would find. We might find some crazy guy who's legitimately healing people, or some less crazy guy. I wasn't assuming anything. I had no idea, and then we decided to go visit. Well, apparently this was John. So John had also gotten our information.
Crazy or less crazy?
Less crazy.
Well, I'm not going to comment on which version we found, but John also, he didn't know that we were planning on coming, and he called me, which was the first sign to me that I was dealing with someone who knew how to honor not just protocol, but how the Lord has organized His church. So he says there's these people getting healed in the ministry that I'm a part of that belong to another church. I'm going to reach out to the pastor and talk to him and greet him and invite him. And that's what he did. And I said, well, it turns out we're coming this Sunday. He said, great. And he invited us to come and to be a part of, and essentially to to be a part of, but also observe the training session that he holds on a weekly basis, at least at that point in time. And so we went down there, and we just didn't know what to expect. There were about 12 people from our church with us, because they'd all heard. We had these people share their testimonies in the services, because we wanted people to know we've been talking about how God heals, and believing the Lord for miracles, and here miracles happen. We celebrate them. And so we go to see what's going on, and it turned out John wasn't actually teaching that night. There was someone else teaching, which to me was another great example of who we were encountering, because here's a guy who is incredibly gifted, and yet he's encouraging other people to step up into roles of leadership. And this guy who was teaching, it was his first time teaching. He shared with us. I said, how fantastic that this guy, he's actually ushering people into leadership. I thought that was great. So all of these positive signs I was encountering. And we encountered some people who said things that were a little off-putting as well. And I knew that was going to come with the territory.
In the course of ministering or speaking about the particular subject at hand?
Coming into their training, we had dinner first, so we're interacting with people. I had learned at your church, among others, that whenever there's a work of God, interesting people show up. So I was expecting that. But, we met some interesting people. So John gives the floor to this other gentleman who teaches. It was a solid teaching, a biblical teaching. And then he says, now we're going to pray. If you want healing, come over here. If you want prayer for something else, go over here. So Sonia went to the side for healing, and I went to the other side, not knowing what to expect from there.